My name is Anna Lee, and I'm 32 years old. I manage commercial construction projects, the kind of work where you take a million unruly parts and make one structure that doesn't shake in the wind. Order out of chaos has always been my language. I wish I could say the same about love. Every last weekend of summer, my family congregates at my Uncle Frank's house. We do it big, grills talking, kids pelting back and forth through sprinkler mist, the aunties with their plastic tumblers of Chardonnay, uncles trash-talking over cornhole like there's a trophy at stake. 3 generations compressed into one noisy backyard. Roots, connection, a reminder of the ground under your feet. It's the last place you expect a fault line to open. I was at the grill, tongs in one hand, timing burgers like a foreman timing a concrete pour. My boyfriend, Evan, was in his element. Bright smile, bigger laugh, orbiting easily toward the most animated circle. My female cousins and Aunt Teresa, who loves a wedding story more than oxygen. They were dissecting a celebrity ceremony, dress, venue, guest list. Inevitably, the conversation ricocheted to us. "So when are you two going to make it official?" my cousin Nina asked, half teasing, half earnest. From the grill, I heard Evan's laugh carry, loud, performative, the kind that steals oxygen from every other sound. "Oh God, I don't know," he said. "If we ever get married, she'll be lucky if I don't cheat." The deck went silent so fast even the ice in the coolers seemed to stop settling. The only noises left were the hiss of fat hitting flame and the thin metallic click of my tongs against the grate. I didn't turn. I watched a bead of grease slide off a patty, catch fire, and vanish. Somewhere behind me, someone let out a brittle laugh, then another, thin, apologetic. "Kidding," Evan added, voice pitched like he was tossing confetti over a grave. Mostly. My chest didn't explode, it narrowed. A tidy compaction, like a steel band cinched around a barrel. The world didn't blur, it sharpened. I could see the grill marks blackening into a grid. I could count the freckles on my wrist. Humiliation has a cruel way of sharpening detail. I plated burgers and smiled. I handed buns to children and asked how much ketchup. I hugged my aunt when she complimented my corn salad. I did not look at Evan. If I looked, I'd have to inventory the faces. The cousins who'd been drinking his stories like summer lemonade, the aunt who adored him, the uncle who'd warned me that charm is a currency that spends fast. And I'd have to inventory my own, the one he was counting on seeing crumple. He tried to catch my eye. He wanted a quick skirmish he could dominate with jokes, then a dramatic reconciliation later. Tears, apologies, a reset in his register, where the real offense was that I couldn't take a joke. I refused to give him that battlefield. I built a wall of small, ordinary tasks and hid behind them until the sun slid down and the tiki torches sputtered to life. When guests started peeling off with plastic containers and hugs, Uncle Frank tipped his head toward the darker edge of the yard. He's my dad's older brother, a retired cop with a face carved into quiet lines. Frank doesn't talk in paragraphs. He talks in verdicts. We stood beyond the torches where the lawn gives up to shadow. "I heard him," he said, voice low. I nodded, jaw steady. "You're solid, Lynn. You build things to last." He jerked his chin toward the house, where Evan was backlit in the kitchen doorway, charming a knot of relatives who wanted their evening back. Not a reckoning. "That boy? Flash, not foundation." My throat tried to close. I made it open. "I want to go home and tear it down," I said. "All of it." "I know." He folded his arms. "That's what he wants, too. Big fight. He cries, you cry. He calls it a joke. You forgive him. He learns the exchange rate. Disrespect for a few tears." He paused long enough for the crickets to come back. "Don't give him what he understands. Give him what he fears." "And what's that?" "Exposure." Frank's mouth twitched, somewhere between pity and pride. "A person who jokes about cheating isn't joking. It's a trial balloon. He's checking wind speed. Believe him." I stared at the grass and saw rebar, lines crossing lines, a grid you pour truth into. Believe him. It sounded deceptively simple, like the first line of a demolition plan. "So what do I do?" The words came out flat, practical, like I was asking about a materials delay. "You do nothing he can stage," Frank said. "You go home. You act fine. You let him get comfortable. While he relaxes, you get information. No yelling, no drama, just blueprint. When you end it on your terms, with facts he can't outrun." The strategy slid into me like a steel beam seating. I wasn't being told to be a doormat. I was being told to change the architecture. We walked back into the light. Evan reached for my waist. I let his hand settle where it always did, and I matched the smile he offered the room. "You okay?" he whispered, testing. "Of course," I said, and watched relief soften his face like butter at room temperature. On the drive home, with crickets droning through the open windows and the smell of charcoal still threading my hair, he tried the soft approach. "You're not mad, right? It was a joke. Bad one." He glanced at me, looking for the crease he could wedge apologies into. My sense of humor's dark sometimes. "It's fine," I said, as if choosing between two movie times. "I get it." He exhaled, a small, smug sound. Comfort, like a door left unlocked. At home, he tugged me close on the couch, scrolling reels, narrating someone's vacation fail video. I rested my head against his shoulder and watched the reflection of the phone screen ripple across the framed photo of us on the opposite wall. Two people in bright sun, my hand on his chest, the future a clean, white space beyond the frame. Inside, I took inventory. Not of feelings, those were a dark weather system I couldn't navigate tonight, but of facts. We'd shared passcodes since month 3. He loved his phone like an extra lung, but slept like the dead. He left patterns, always had. People do. In construction, you don't scream at the wind. You study it. You don't argue with the soil. You test it. Then you build accordingly. I brushed my teeth, set an early alarm, and laid my phone on the nightstand face down next to his. Evan's arm flopped across my waist, heavy with unearned peace. His breathing slowed. The room cooled. On the street below, someone's laughter rose and fell like a tossed bottle. I stared into the darkness and imagined a clean blueprint unfurling. Quiet lines, measured angles. I could already see the load-bearing walls. Stay calm, gather facts, choose the site, pour once. The last thing I felt before sleep was the steady thud of his heart against my back. The last thing I thought was my uncle's word. Exposure, not rage, not theater. Morning would come. When it did, I wouldn't start a fight. I'd start a plan. If rage is a fire, then planning is water. It cools, it clears, it shows you what's actually there at the bottom. Evan sleeps like a felled tree. One clean collapse, no stirring. At 2:11 a.m., the alarm I set as a drink water reminder buzzed and died under my finger. The apartment was the kind of dark that makes you hear your own pulse. On the nightstand, our phones lay side by side like glossy black river stones. We'd traded passcodes months ago when we were still high on the romance of promises. In construction, we call that phase artist renderings, the glossy pamphlet of a future that has not met weather or budget. I slid out from under his arm and padded to the kitchen, the tile cool underfoot. No lights. Light tells on you. The fridge's hum felt too loud. I set his phone on the counter, opened it, and didn't look for a smoking gun. People think investigations hinge on one red message labeled cheating. They don't. They hinge on patterns. His texts weren't chaotic, they were curated. Threads with certain women, acquaintances who had become sudden fitness gurus, or work friends who always typed in lowercase, were suspiciously tidy. Days missing, then a jump, then an inside joke that referenced a conversation no longer there. If you've ever seen a concrete slab where someone jackhammered out a strip to hide a conduit they forgot to plan, you know the look. It's neat around the edges in a way that screams it used to be messy. Call logs told a different story. Midnights and 1 a.m.s, marked with numbers saved as initials only. 2 of those initials matched Instagram handles that still followed him from a city he barely visited. The one that bothered me most wasn't a woman. It was a string labeled Flight Plan, a group chat with 3 of his closest guy friends. I opened it. They were exactly who they'd been at every party. Groomsmen in waiting, men who turned adult life into a permanent bachelor season. The chat was a year deep. Memes, weekend plans, tiny flexes disguised as banter. And threaded between those, me. I was Ms. Stable. The contractor? Google Calendar with lashes. They laughed about my meal prep, my identical lunchboxes lined like soldiers. Someone posted a photo of me installing a smart thermostat and captioned it, "Warden upgrading the prison." I could have closed the app right there and saved myself the bruise, but blueprints are honest or they fail. I scrolled back to the day before the barbecue, the day the joke hadn't been a joke, just a truth in public clothing. FP Rafe, you and Lynn really gonna lock it down this fall? Thought you said ring shopping. Evan, LOL, the setup is too good to walk away from right now. Pause. I let the words sit like wet cement. If you step in too fast, you ruin the pour. If you wait, it shows you where it wants to settle. Evan, she's safe as a bank, man. Real estate she bought on her own, benefits, stable. I can build whatever I want on top. See how it goes. FB Miles, careful, she's not dumb. Evan, she trusts me completely. I could probably cheat, and as long as I smile and say I love her, she'd believe me. She should feel lucky I haven't bothered yet. There it was. Not the smoking gun, the architectural drawing, the mindset, the load that would always be trying to ride on a foundation that wasn't built for it. My hands didn't shake, not from restraint, from clarity. You don't argue with a wall when it tells you its load capacity. You adjust your design or you stop building. I took screenshots, each frame like a measured cut, timestamp, sender, context. I forwarded them to a cloud I keep for job documents, disguised under project codes no one but my team would recognize. I didn't send them to my friends. I didn't text my cousin in a midnight howl. I didn't become a siren for my own pain. Noise is easy. Structure is hard. Back in messages, I searched for threads that had been sanitized. One of the women, Kara with a sunflower avatar, had a peculiar rhythm. Long voice notes from him, short replies from her, then stretches of blank. His Photos app had a new habit too, a folder in recently deleted that never had anything older than 2 days. Not illegal, not conclusive, just conscious. I toggled to his Notes app. Men like Evan narrate to themselves when they're planning. A shared grocery list, a future vacation ideas page, a private note titled Vows, LOL Idea. Inside, a list of lines clearly meant to be ironic. I promise to always pretend I didn't read your emails. I promise to never bring up options B, C, D until I need to. The ring of a mind that thinks romance is a showroom you waltz through, not a house you live in through every season. I locked the phone and stood in the dark kitchen, palms on the counter, head low. The tile cooled my skin through the thin cotton of my t-shirt. A drip from the faucet ticked. Somewhere in the building, a baby cried once and gave up. The apartment had the hollow sound of a place you suddenly realize you don't live in anymore, even if your name is still on the deed. Grief came then, quiet and concentrated, like a black square you set in your chest and do not drop. There had been a blueprint in my head. Marriage, kids, the slow, ordinary joy of a life that keeps its promises. When he spoke at the barbecue, I'd watched that drawing darken. Here, in this glowless kitchen, I watched it roll itself up and disappear. But demolition isn't chaos if you plan it. It's a sequence. Pull this wall, brace that beam, cut the utilities, and press once. The whole building comes down without killing the neighbors. I breathed, counted to 8 like we do when we lift glass panes, and returned the phone to the nightstand. Morning performed its familiar trick, making everything look solvable with sunlight. Evan brewed coffee, kissed my forehead, and asked if I'd seen a story about a tourist falling into a fountain in Rome. He laughed at the punchline before he told it. I smiled at the right beats and imagined the sound of a projector fan warming up. All day I moved through tasks like I was touring a job site with engineers, focused, courteous, relentlessly practical. In a gap between meetings, I printed the flight plan screenshots on the office machine. Black and white, clipped margins, no identifying metadata, and slid them into a folder labeled MEP RevC. No one at work would question that abbreviation. The safest place to hide something damning is under jargon only you understand. That evening, Evan came home buoyant. He swung the door wide and filled the apartment with the expensive cologne smell he saved for events. "Babe," he said, dropping his keys into the bowl I'd installed for that purpose. "Huge news. Rafe proposed in Paris. He and Amaya are having this massive engagement party in 3 weeks. Hotel ballroom, the works. Black tie. We need to get you a dress that makes the room go quiet." 3 weeks. A downtown ballroom. AV screens. Strangers and friends. The precise audience that had nodded along to his swagger. The space where he believed his charm paid rent. Sounds beautiful, I said. We should do something nice for them, a surprise. He grinned, relief and ego dovetailing as they always did when he thought the spotlight would arrive already tilted toward him. You're the best, see? Ms. Stable comes through. I held his gaze until he looked away first. I'll take care of it, I said. He plopped onto the couch, feet on the coffee table I'd refinished, and scrolled through photos from Rafe and Amaya's trip. Look at that ring, he breathed, as if he hadn't written what he'd written, as if gold answered to the same laws as character. I nodded, already assembling the parts list in my head. You don't just show truth, you stage it in a way that removes every exit except the one you choose. Slideshows are simple if you understand pacing. Start with nostalgia, low-res college shots, beach sunsets, arm-around-shoulder group pics with bad hair. Keep the audience warm, open. Then you pivot with music. Let the piano swell. 30 seconds is an eternity when a room is silent. High-resolution truth arriving one line at a time, slow enough for denial to fail, fast enough to keep control. The next days were a choreography. In public, I was affectionate, effortless. I talked about dresses, asked his opinion on a navy versus graphite suit. He relaxed into the role he preferred, a man adored by a competent woman who absorbed the logistics of his life like a sponge. In private, I became the foreman no one sees, the one who signs off on the demolitions permit and makes the call to close the block. I reached out to Adele, an event planner my firm uses for corporate galas. I pitched a small, tasteful surprise slideshow to celebrate Rafe and Amaya. Happy to help, she said, sending me screen ratios and file specs like they were recipes for something sweet. I thanked her, saved the specs, and started building. My laptop became a staging floor. Childhood photos of the couple, pulled from their public posts. Shots from trips, blurry dance floor joy. I layered transitions gentle enough to feel like memory. In one corner of my screen, the folder labeled NMEAE, RIC sat like a weight. The final 30 seconds would not be petty. They would be precise. His words, in 72-point font. The exact lines. The exact timestamps. The quiet piano would keep playing. The room would do the rest. Late one night, Evan wandered into my office nook and kissed the top of my head. You're amazing, he murmured, eyes flicking over the thumbnails of happy couples. They're gonna cry. They are, I said. He missed the double edge, like always. Flash, not foundation. Trial balloons, not weather reports. On the day I exported the first cut, I watched the progress bar fill like a pore reaching its formwork. Smooth, even, irreversible, once set. I thought of Uncle Frank, the way he says whole sermons with one sentence. Give him what he fears, not rage, not rumor, exposure. 3 weeks isn't a long time to some people. For a builder, it's enough to bring a structure up and take one down. 3 weeks, 21 days, 504 hours. That's how long it takes to build an ending. Evan had no idea he was living inside a countdown. Every morning, he woke up next to me with a smile and a stretch, kissed my shoulder, and said things like, "You're the best thing that ever happened to me." He said it so easily now, like muscle memory. Maybe he believed it, because I didn't challenge it. Because I smiled back, brewed coffee, and asked whether he wanted the blue tie or the black one for the party. It was almost poetic how fast comfort blinds people. During the day, he went to work. I went to construction sites, half-built towers echoing with drills and the smell of metal dust. There's a strange peace in watching structures rise. Everything has a purpose. Every beam labeled and measured. Every flaw documented. Human relationships aren't like that. We skip inspections, hide cracks behind drywall, pretend love will hold. But love isn't concrete, it's glass. And glass only looks strong until it meets the right pressure. That week, I spent nights fine-tuning the slideshow. It opened with pictures of Rafe and Amaya as kids. Goofy smiles, braces, travel shots. I added gentle transitions, a golden tint, subtle lens flares. Then I wove in clips of their friends, group photos, little video snippets from trips. It was sweet, emotional, and exactly what everyone would expect from Lynn, the thoughtful girlfriend. Then, 30 seconds before the end, everything changed. The piano would slow, the lighting on screen would fade to white, And then, one sentence at a time, Evan's words would appear. Black text on a soft background, his name right there, time-stamped and irrefutable. She's a safety net while I figure out what I really want. She trusts me completely. I could probably cheat, and she'd believe me. She's just lucky I haven't bothered yet. I didn't embellish, didn't add commentary. His words didn't need help. They carried their own poison. It was beautiful, in a dark, surgical way. Clean, controlled, no shouting, no destruction. Just truth projected 10 feet tall. 2 nights before the engagement party, Evan came home with 2 bottles of champagne. "For the weekend," he said, grinning like a teenager. "You've been killing it at work, babe. Let's celebrate a little early." He popped one open in the kitchen, the cork bouncing off the ceiling. Foam spilled over his hand. "Careful," I said, handing him a towel. He winked. "You know me, always a little too much. Too much charm, too much ego, too much everything." We toasted. He clinked his glass against mine. "To us," he said, and looked so damn sure of himself I almost laughed. "To us," I echoed. When he turned away, I studied his reflection in the glass door of the balcony. He looked like someone I used to know. Familiar outline, strange interior. A blueprint I'd once memorized, but couldn't recognize anymore. On the morning of the party, I woke before him. Sunlight washed through the blinds, cutting his face into stripes. He looked peaceful. I wondered how it was possible for someone to sleep so soundly inside a lie. Uncle Frank texted me just after 7. "Frank, you ready, kid?" Me. "As I'll ever be." Frank. "Remember what I said. Calm demolition. No drama. Walk away clean." I smiled. He always knew what mattered. The cleanup is part of the build. The ballroom was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers, white floral arrangements, a band tuning in the corner. Waiters moved like synchronized gears. The entire room shimmered in gold and soft laughter. Evan was in his tailored navy suit, cufflinks glinting, every inch the man people loved to like. I wore a black silk dress, simple, classic, quiet power. "Babe," he whispered, taking my hand, "you look incredible." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. I wanted to look unforgettable when he remembered this night for the rest of his life. Adele, the event planner, found me near the back. "Got your file? Beautiful work," she whispered. "We'll run it right after the father of the bride's toast." "Perfect," I said. Evan didn't ask what I was arranging. He was too busy greeting people, shaking hands, performing charm like an art form. He looked like the main character of a movie that hadn't realized it was about to end. When the lights dimmed, chatter softened to a ripple. Adele's voice floated over the mic. "And now, a special surprise, put together by a dear friend of the couple." Soft piano filled the room. The first photos appeared. Rafe and Amaya on the beach, laughing. The crowd melted into nostalgia and smiles. Evan slipped his arm around my waist, squeezing affectionately. "You nailed it," he whispered. I nodded. "It's almost over." He didn't notice the weight in my voice. The slideshow played on. Childhood photos, vacation clips, engagement selfies. Then, transition. A white fade. A few seconds of stillness. The piano slowed. And then, in perfect silence, the words appeared. Evan Tran, 10:23 p.m., Aug. 25. She's a safety net while I figure out what I really want. Confusion rippled through the guests. The words lingered on screen just long enough for comprehension to hit. Then the next slide. Evan Tran, 10:25 p.m. She trusts me completely. I could probably cheat, and she'd believe me. A hush fell. You could hear the air conditioning hum. Someone gasped. The final slide appeared. She's just lucky I haven't bothered yet. The piano kept playing, soft, mournful. The lights slowly rose. Evan's arm fell away from my waist. His voice cracked. "What the hell is this?" All around, faces turned. Some toward him, some toward me. His friends, Rafe, Miles, the whole flight plan crew, looked like ghosts who'd been caught mid-lie. "Lynn," he hissed, grabbing my wrist. "You did this?" I met his eyes, calm as the night before a storm. "You did." He froze, because there was no defense, no out of context, no joke. Just his own words echoing across the walls of a room full of people who once admired him. Adele cut the music. The silence that followed was the kind that devours. Amaya's mother gasped. Rafe swore under his breath. Someone dropped a glass. The crash rang out like punctuation. Evan's mouth opened and closed, a fish out of water. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said quietly. You were right about one thing. You should have left before I figured it out. He took a half step toward me, then stopped. The crowd wasn't looking at me anymore. They were looking at him. The spotlight he loved so much had finally turned honest. I leaned in close enough that only he could hear. The joke's not funny anymore, is it? Then I stepped back, turned toward the exit, and walked, slowly, evenly, through the ballroom doors. I didn't look back. Behind me I heard it begin. The murmurs, the questions, the collapse. By the time the heavy doors swung shut, the first shout cracked through the silence, followed by the sound of someone crying. The storm had arrived, and I was already outside. Uncle Frank was waiting in the hotel lobby, leaning on his cane like he'd been there an hour. He looked up when he saw me and nodded once. "You done?" "Yes." He studied my face. "No tears?" "No need," I said. He smiled, small and tired and proud. "Let's get out of here, kid. You look like a woman who just finished a long job." We stepped out into the night. The city lights glimmered on the glass towers across the street. Somewhere inside one of them, another project of mine was rising. Steady, measured, unbreakable. I exhaled for the first time in weeks. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was free. They say sound travels slower through shock. I believe that now. Because when those doors shut behind me, the ballroom didn't erupt. It folded. First a ripple of whispers, then the brittle shattering of the night's perfection. And somewhere inside that mess stood Evan, trying to catch pieces of a story he could no longer control. I didn't stay to see it. I didn't need to. The hotel lobby was almost empty. The soft piano from the party drifted faintly through the closed doors, oddly calm after the chaos it had just accompanied. Uncle Frank sat near a pillar, hat tilted low, hands folded over his cane. He looked up as I approached. "Is it done?" "Yes." He nodded once, the way he does when an answer doesn't need a second opinion. And I walked out. A pause, then a small, knowing smile. "Good girl." He stood, the slow, measured way he always did, and we walked out together into the crisp night. The air smelled like rain and champagne. Behind us, through the tall glass windows, people were beginning to spill out into the hallways. Some in shock, others just chasing gossip. I could almost hear the questions forming. Was that real? Did she fake it? Who records their boyfriend? Frank opened the door of his truck and gestured for me to climb in. As we pulled out of the hotel's circular drive, headlights slicing the darkness, I caught one last glimpse of Evan through the glass, cornered by his friends, hands up, voice raised. It was the first time I'd seen him look small. The next morning, the news spread faster than wildfire through dry grass. By breakfast, my phone had already started vibrating nonstop. Not from him, from everyone else. Messages from cousins, co-workers, even people I hadn't spoken to in months. Screenshots of group chats, memes, rumors. At 10 a.m., my best friend Mai texted, "Girl, everyone's talking about the slideshow. It's everywhere." By noon, clips from the video had leaked. Someone had recorded it on their phone during the chaos. One of the guests posted it on TikTok with the caption, "When Karma Wears Heels." 1 million views in under 24 hours. And through all that noise, Evan's silence was louder. He tried calling once. 11:42 p.m., 2 days after the party. I didn't pick up. Then came the messages. Long, rambling paragraphs that started with, "You blindsided me," and ended with, "I can explain." Explain what? The words he typed? The truth he'd written in his own hand? He sent another at 2 a.m. "You could have just talked to me, Lynn. You didn't have to humiliate me." I stared at it for a long time before typing a single reply. "I believed you when you told me who you were." Then I blocked his number. The fallout came fast. Rafe and Amaya's engagement party, the one that was supposed to flood their socials with perfect photos, became a trending cautionary tale. Their PR team, Rafe worked for a tech company, begged people to stop tagging them. Amaya deleted her Instagram for a week. The rest of the flight plan crew, they turned on each other. Someone leaked private messages defending themselves by blaming Evan for bragging too much. Friendship groups cracked like glass under pressure. And Evan, he disappeared from social media entirely. Mai told me she ran into him at a cafe 2 weeks later. He looked different, thinner, quieter, hollowed out. "He didn't even make eye contact," she said, "just grabbed his coffee and left." I didn't ask for more. I didn't want to know. At work, life settled into a kind of calm rhythm. My project still needed finishing. Deadlines still came, My team didn't mention what happened, but there were glances, some sympathetic, some impressed. My supervisor, a woman who'd quietly survived her own storm years ago, stopped by my desk one morning. "You kept your composure," she said. "That's rarer than people think." I smiled faintly. "I build things that don't fall apart easily." "Good," she said. "Just remember, demolition can be part of construction too." One evening, about 3 weeks after the incident, I found myself back at Uncle Frank's house. The late summer barbecue smell still clung faintly to the air, though the yard was empty now. He handed me a beer, nodded toward the old wooden deck. "Hell of a summer," he said. "That's one way to put it." We sat in silence for a while. Crickets started up somewhere near the hedge. "You know," he said, "people talk a lot about revenge, but most of them don't understand what it really is." "What is it then?" "Peace," he said simply. "Not the noise you make after. The quiet that follows when you finally believe the truth." I took a sip of my drink and let his words settle. He was right. The quiet was the best part. No yelling, no explanations, no second chances. Just clarity. The stars were faint but visible. The night was cool. I thought about how many structures I'd built in my career. Towers of steel, glass, and concrete. But none of them had taught me as much as tearing one down. A month later, an email arrived. The sender, Evan Tran. Subject, please read. I almost deleted it unread. Curiosity got the better of me. "Lynn, I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need to say this. I know I humiliated you. I didn't mean that joke at the barbecue the way it sounded. I was nervous, trying to be funny. The messages, they were just me venting with the guys. I was stupid. I lost the best thing that ever happened to me. Your uncle filled your head with poison. He made you cruel. I hope you're proud." I didn't reply. I didn't even finish the last paragraph, because buried between the excuses and self-pity was the only line that mattered. I was stupid. He was right. He was. But I didn't feel anger anymore, just distance. I archived the email and opened a new tab. Construction site schedules, project updates, things that build, not break. That night, I drove out to the old bridge overlooking the city. Lights shimmered on the water like scattered pieces of glass. For the first time in months, I felt light. I sent Uncle Frank a text. Me. "You were right. Exposure worked better than anger." Frank. "I told you, kid. They don't fear fury. They fear truth." Me. "What's next?" Frank. "Build something better. That's always next." I pocketed my phone, leaned on the railing, and watched the river carry reflections downstream. Demolition was done. Blueprint complete. The site was cleared. Tomorrow, construction would begin again. 6 months later. When people talk about closure, they make it sound like a door you just decide to shut. But it isn't. It's a slow construction, a long process of clearing the debris, pulling out the nails, sweeping the dust until you can stand on clean ground again. For me, closure didn't come with an apology or justice or even satisfaction. It came with quiet. With the first morning I woke up and realized Evan hadn't crossed my mind at all. Life moved forward. The project I'd been managing, a new hospital wing, was finally nearing completion. Every morning, I'd walk the site in my hard hat, clipboard in hand, sun slicing through the unfinished glass panels. The workers greeted me by name now. "Morning, boss," they'd say. And I'd smile, because for the first time in a long time, that word felt like it actually fit. Sometimes I'd stand on the top floor at sunset and look at the skeleton of the building, all steel and promise. You could see the city skyline from there, the cranes, the traffic, the endless hum of new beginnings. It reminded me of Uncle Frank's words. Demolition is just the first stage of construction. He wasn't wrong. The fallout from the slideshow had long settled. The internet had found new scandals. People moved on, as they always do. But the people closest to the explosion, they didn't recover so easily. Rafe and Amaya eventually held a smaller wedding out of town. Mai told me Evan wasn't invited. Evan tried to get a new job in marketing after quitting his old one, but apparently every interview ended awkwardly once they Googled his name. The video still floated around on Reddit and YouTube in re-uploads, under titles like "She exposed him at a party," and everyone cheered. He moved to another city eventually. I know because he updated his LinkedIn, not because I looked for it, but because someone tagged me in a post. I didn't click. He'd become a footnote in my story, and that's the best ending he could have had. To stop mattering. Uncle Frank and I still go fishing every other weekend. We don't talk much when we're out there. We never need to. He baits the hooks, I steer the small boat, and the silence between us feels like peace instead of distance. Sometimes he'll glance over and say, "You did good, kid." And I'll answer, "I just followed the blueprint." He'll laugh, "Nah, you wrote a better one." One Sunday, my cousin Nina, the same one who'd asked, "So when are you two getting married?" invited me to another barbecue. Same yard, same folding tables, same smell of grilled corn and smoke. I hesitated for a second before saying yes. When I arrived, people were warm. No one mentioned the past, though I caught a few sidelong glances, the kind that said they'd all heard the story in their own version. It didn't matter. The tension that used to live in my shoulders was gone. Halfway through the evening, Nina clinked her glass for attention. "Lynn," she said, smiling, "I just wanted to say, you look happy, really happy, and you deserve that." I blinked. For a moment, I couldn't find words. Then I laughed softly. "I think I finally am." Later, as the sky burned orange and the kids chased each other with sparklers, I found myself standing by the same grill where everything had fallen apart 6 months ago. The same spot where Evan had told a joke that wasn't a joke at all. The difference was, this time, the smoke smelled like freedom. I thought about how quickly life can collapse, how something that feels unshakable can crumble in one careless sentence, but also how much stronger the rebuild can be when you do it with intention. I used to think revenge was power. It's not. Revenge is noise. Power is peace. And peace comes when you finally believe people the first time they tell you who they are, and you choose yourself instead. When I got home that night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, still smelling faintly of smoke and laughter. I didn't see the woman who'd been humiliated in front of her family anymore. I saw the woman who'd stood still, listened, planned, and rebuilt. Evan had once told me, "You build things that last." He was right. He just didn't realize I was one of them. As I crawled into bed, I checked my phone one last time. No messages, no noise, just the soft hum of the night and the quiet contentment of a life back on its own foundation. In the dark, I whispered to no one in particular. "Demolition complete, structure sound, project closed." Then I smiled to myself. Tomorrow, I'd start designing something new. Not a skyscraper this time, but a life that didn't need rebuilding anymore.